Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in advance of Veterans Day to take a moment for our country to thank those who have served. You know, you're going to see some faces on here, and I'm going to just highlight 5 individuals from my district in West Texas amongst the thousands who have offered to serve. Many of these are part of the greatest generation, and this is the greatest country in the world, and it's because of their sacrifices. I rise today to recognize a World War II hero, Mr. Bill Womack of Midland, Texas, who celebrated his 100th birthday this year. Mr. Womack joined the National Guard immediately after graduating high school. And after the Pearl Harbor bombing, Mr. Womack became an artilleryman stationed in North Africa and Europe. Bill is one of the legendary Texas Liberators, a group of 488 Texans who fought against the Nazi regime to liberate Jewish prisoners. He is among a group of heroes who first breached the concentration camp Dachau and helped bring World War II prisoners to safety. Countless lives were saved because of the efforts and the selflessness of Mr. Womack. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to highlight a hero of mine, Mr. Phil George of San Angelo, Texas, a distinguished veteran and a university basketball coach. Mr. George is a legend in my hometown of San Angelo, a veteran not only of World War II and Korea, but also of Vietnam, where he spent years as an incredibly talented fighter pilot. And when our nation called, he answered multiple times. I cannot overstate the sacrifices that he made both professionally and also in his community after his service in the military. Not only is he a hero, but he is also a mentor to so many. And he leaves a legacy in San Angelo to this day of the selfless ability to lead others, to motivate others to a life of service. His stories are incredible. His faith in God is palpable, and his love for his late wife, Toddy, and his entire family are inspiring. And in addition to his record of service, he has an incredible record as a basketball coach and an athletic director at Angelo State University. I want to thank Mr. George for his service to this nation. Mr. Speaker, I rise to recognize Mr. Maynard Schwertner, a Vietnam veteran who spent his entire life in the service of this country, both in Vietnam and back at home. As a well driller in Vietnam, Mr. Schwertner spent his time providing clean water for civilians and the military. And back at home, Mr. Schwertner has dedicated his life to serving fellow veterans, and that includes helping establish Vietnam veterans chapters, memorials, and support groups in San Angelo, Texas. He is a distinguished member of the community who lives a life dedicated to supporting our nation and our armed forces. Mr. Speaker, I rise to recognize Mr. Gilberto Torres for his service in World War II. Gilberto was part of the second wave of the D-Day invasion of Normandy, the legendary and allies to liberate Europe. Tragically, when trekking through the war-torn Europe, Gilberto was fired upon and struck by enemy machine guns. He survived his injuries and was honorably discharged, but not before earning many medals for his heroism and his bravery, including the Purple Heart and the Bronze Star Medal, and many more. He is in his 90s today, and he hopes to visit Normandy, and I hope that he can do that. Mr. Speaker, I rise to recognize Mr. J.L. Stevens, a West Texan, a World War II veteran who also took part in both the Normandy invasion on D-Day and the invasion of Okinawa. His service to this country was inspired at the age of 17 as he enlisted in the Navy with the desire to follow in the footsteps of his brother. Stevens' sacrifice helped create a safer world for his 2 daughters, his 6 grandchildren, and his 12 great-grandchildren. Mr. Speaker, I think it's important for us to recognize the service of all of these service members. And as we approach Veterans Day, these are just a few stories amongst many, bipartisan in all of our districts. And my hope is that this country can look to the service of these, many of whom are part of the greatest generation, and we can realize that this is the greatest country in the world, but it's not without sacrifice. It's these folks and it's their families' sacrifice who brought us together. And once again, I believe that going forward, veterans just like these will continue to bring us together. It's my challenge to everybody in this body and all across the United States that we recognize our veteran service and their families' sacrifices as we approach Veterans Day. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.